Coming up on the Locked On NBA Draft Podcast with no ceilings, we're going insider trading. I'm going to take you through my in-person scouting reactions from UConn versus Illinois. That's coming up next.
You are Locked On NBA Draft with no ceilings. Your daily podcast on the future stars of the NBA. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What is going on, draft sickos? My name is Corey Tulaba. Welcome to the Locked On NBA Draft Podcast with no ceilings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the #1 sports podcast network. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. All right, guys, today I am going to take you through my in-person scouting reactions between Illinois and UConn. Live, Madison Square Garden. Last week, I hit the road, and I needed to get up-close eyes in a battle that was loaded with NBA draft prospects, not only in this year, but potentially in the next classes as well. It was a really exciting game. We got the return of Braylon Mullins, or his debut, rather, in college. He was a potential lottery pick. We'll get into that. But first, we are going to break down the Illinois prospects. There were a number of prospects on the Illinois side that we are going to get into. First, let's talk who impressed me the most. And to me, the most impressive performance on the Illinois side came from Kylan Boswell. Kylan Boswell is a guy who I wouldn't necessarily say that I have always been the highest on. He's always been intriguing. He's a guy who is like ridiculously young for his class. I think he's 20 years old as a senior right now, to give you a little bit of context for how old he was when he first came into college. But he is a short, stocky, bulldog fire hydrant kind of point guard who's got really good length. And I think this year it's finally clicked with me. I love the pace that he's playing at. I love the ability to kind of get into the paint, make drop-off passes. He's hitting outside shots. He's doing just a really great job of running this Illinois team. He did a good job last year too. But for this year, it just seems like he's taking the leadership role. He's taking the role of keeping this Illinois squad kind of glued together. He had 28 points. He rebounded the ball, and I really liked his defense. Even though he's on the shorter side for a guard, I think what's interesting about him is that because he's got that fire hydrant build and he's got that length, he's not necessarily just going to be food when he's switched off on somebody who's a little bit of a bigger player, because he's definitely willing to embrace physicality, not just on the defensive end, on the offensive end too. Like almost like old school Mark Jackson. There was a possession, took the ball into the post, dipped his shoulder, drew a foul, like played really physical. The jumper is not like the most pure jumper ever, but he's like a capable outside shooter. He was really, really good on the Illinois side. A guy who has, a little bit of buzz right now on the Illinois side as well is Andrei Stojakovic. This is the son of Peja Stojakovic. Now, the first thing that you're going to think when you hear Stojakovic is shooter, right? And unfortunately, Andre is not the same caliber shooter as his dad. He is much more of like a pure, like, let me get to the mid-range, be physical, turn my back, dip the shoulder to create a little bit of separation, and then knock down a little midi, self-creating on the ball. He's not like a terrible shooter. Like, he's okay. I think that mechanically, one of the things that I noticed in warmups about Stojakovic was that his shooting form, I think, basically in how he positions his hand on the ball, needs a lot of reworking. He starts out with the ball almost like his hand on top of the ball, and it's very palmy, and there's very little backward wrist flexion. So I think he's front rimming and kind of shooting a somewhat harder ball than he needs to. I think if he just bends his wrist back a little bit and then gets that ball into his fingertips, because the ball comes off his fingertips nicely, he gets good rotation on the ball. That'll give him a little bit more arc on the shot, a little cleaner release. It'll be smoother. I think that would help him. But outside of the shooting, which is just kind of okay rather than like bad or great, I think the thing with him that he needs to improve on the most is leveraging his scoring gravity to make his teammates better, because his dad is known as an incredible shooter, but the thing that gets underrated about his game is that not only is he an incredible shooter, he also was a really, really great passer. He had great passing feel. He maybe the coolest pass ever with like saving the ball behind his back, out of bounds, threw it behind his back, like length of the court, like one of the all-time great passing highlights. The dude could really, really pass. And so Andre, I think, is in a position where he could get buckets. He's a really good scorer, but like when the shot's not going in, like it didn't against UConn, what else is he doing on the floor? Now, he does defend. I really like his physicality. He gets into guys at the point of attack. He's strong. He plays physical. So I like that about him. But I think offensively, like, we know he could score, but if he's not scoring, what else is he going to be able to do? So that's kind of where I'm at with him. Now, let's go to the front court and let's get to my guy, David Mirkovic, who we got a chance to see at the Nike Hoop Summit last April in person. He's coming from overseas. He has a really funky game. His game reminds me of like chin strap UCLA Kevin Love, but like a poor man's version of that. Because he's just kind of like this fire hydrant, similar kind of build, just in a bigger body to Boswell, maybe not as lengthy, although he measured 6'8" in shoes with a 6'11" wingspan at the Hoop Summit. But he's a guy who at the power forward position is kind of old school, and he's physical, but he's more skilled than you would give him credit for. Like, he's got good footwork. He took Alex Karaban off the bounce at one point. I really liked when he did get the ball on the post, his ability to read the defense and hit the weak side and make guys better. So there is a lot to like offensively, even if his jumper wasn't falling. I think he was 0 for 4 from 3, and that's something that is like the separator. Like, Kevin Love is like, right now, he's an all-time, power forward stretch big, and Mirkovic is just not that yet. He needs to become more consistent as an outside shooter, because if he doesn't, I don't know what it looks like at the next level. Defensively, he's not going to be a guy who's protecting the rim. He could definitely hold his own down low because he's strong. Like, I think what impressed me about him for the first time, like seeing him bang down low with Cam Boozer and being able to hold up, and not just hold up, but like wall him off and really make his life difficult. That was like, oh, okay. I kind of like Mirkovic defensively because he can hang with the big boys down low. But he actually had some pretty nice moments on the perimeter. Like, at one point they had him on Jalen Stewart, like chasing him around off screens and stuff, and he kind of held up. He did kind of lose his man, lose sight of the ball by like chasing, because it's not something he's super used to doing. He held up, he held his own. So I like him. He's funky, but he needs to be more consistent as a shooter. He had a pretty okay game overall. Let's talk about the Avicic brothers. Now, I have been lower on Big Z, who, had a lot of momentum. He started at Kentucky, went to Arkansas, now at Illinois to play with his brother Tomislav. So I've always been a little bit skeptical. He's always had pretty good advanced numbers, which is why you never really kind of are out on him. And seeing him in person, like, he's gigantic. The shot looked really smooth coming out of his hands, though he didn't really shoot it in the game, just seeing him in warmups. But the thing I liked about him is that even though he only played 17 minutes, he had 5 blocks, and like, you could really feel his length. He blocked a perimeter jumper. He was blocking shots at the rim. He's just a really big dude who's a good shot blocker. He's got good timing. And even if he's not like the most aggressive player ever, and that's one of the things that's frustrating about him, especially like offensively, he kind of lets the game come to him instead of like going out and just being like making a spectacle out of his time. And in some cases, letting the game come to you is good. And other times, you want to see more aggressiveness. I would love to see more consistent aggressiveness. But like, when he's on the court, you feel him. Whether he can be a 30-minute per game player, I don't know. Like, him and his brother are pretty much straight centers, so there's not a lot of positional versatility. You kind of have to go with one or the other there. They both can spread the floor offensively. On the offense, it could work, but defensively, neither one of them is really going to guard the perimeter all that consistently, so you can't really do it defensively. But, the way that Illinois schemes defensively, they kind of need Avicic, Big Z Avicic, to be out there on the floor, because his brother, Tomislav, who's like another tall lefty shooter with good passing feel, they both can pass the rock, and they both showed those flashes in the game. Big Z had this really nice hit on a backdoor cut from Boswell that was impressive because he's just so tall. He can see over the top, and he knows how to lead the man. So his brother, Tommy, similar kind of player, but less effective defensively, probably more consistent offensively. But defensively, he was just getting attacked pretty much the first 30 minutes of the game. And then a flip switch, like we were calling him out in the No Ceilings group chat, or I was, I guess, because I was there. And all of a sudden, it went Jekyll and Hyde. All of a sudden, he just started, he got it rolling. And he kind of brought them back into the game because UConn was in cruise control for much of it. But overall, he was bad for 30 minutes and really good for 10 minutes. Now, the last guy I want to talk about is Keaton Wagler, who was this unheralded freshman who's kind of got a little bit of buzz now. And he's somebody who, you know, is this like skilled dribble pass shoot wing, but he's a little more theoretical right now than I think, you know, you would like. Yeah, he was very quiet in the game. He made a three. He had a couple of nice dribble combos that showed off his ball handling. He had the sick left-handed pass attacking a closeout to the weak side corner. That was really impressive. But you just saw like an underdeveloped dude physically who was struggling to kind of deal with UConn's physicality. You know, he had this really nice defensive possession where he shadowed his man, slid with him, even got vertical to contest, but like ultimately like couldn't play physical because, you know, he's a young freshman who needs to just get stronger. So defensively that hurt. And then offensively, like when help would rotate over, he couldn't really dip his shoulder and create any kind of space or contact or anything like that. So he really wasn't able to do much offensively when the shot wasn't going because he just doesn't play with that kind of physicality. But ultimately, he is interesting. He's a guy I think you do keep on your radar as a potential one-and-done prospect. But ultimately, he might be a breakout candidate for next year. So we are going to take a quick break. And when we come back on the other side, we are going to break down UConn's NBA prospects. The World Cup is coming back to North America for the first time since 1994. And with 48 teams for the first time ever, it's going to be massive. But let's be honest, getting tickets is usually the hardest part. That's why the Gametime app is clutch, finally giving fans a real advantage when it comes to snagging seats. With Gametime, you can track price drops in real time, get alerts when great seats open, and buy tickets the moment they hit the app. It puts the power back in your hands and makes going to the World Cup realistic instead of impossible. Just pick a game, tap a section, and have your tickets locked in within minutes. No confusion, no hunting for fine print. The seat view feature is a game changer too. You literally see what the pitch looks like from your exact seat before you buy. Prices include fees up front, which I love. No last second surprises at checkout. So take the guesswork out of buying World Cup tickets in every match, concert, or event with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, download the app, make an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go, Gametime. All right, we are back, and we are going to break down the UConn prospects. And we got to start with Braylon Mullins, who made his debut in the college season. This is the highest rated prospect within the 2026 NBA draft class within this game. And nothing too exciting happened. The Garden went crazy when he went in because this is Store South. When you go to the Garden, you know you're going to get UConn fans. So the Garden did go crazy, but he really didn't do much. Didn't play a lot in the first half. First possession that he had defensively, you saw his work rate, hard closeout, right in his man's shirt. Missed his outside shots, did knock down a pull-up midi off a 2-dribble pump fake where you saw like his gravity as a shooter. So, very little did we learn about Braylon Mullins, unfortunately, but it was cool to see him back on the court. And I think getting him comfortable going forward is going to be big time for UConn and hopefully for this draft class. Next guy probably the highest rated guy on UConn outside of Mullins was Terrace Reed, who also is kind of making his return from injury. He's still playing with a high ankle sprain, so he didn't do too much. He had 5 boards. He picked up, I think, 4 fouls in his 15 minutes. And, he kind of had trouble with Illinois front court. Much healthier, gigantic dudes. And so he was a little quiet, but again, he's come back from injury. He just wanted to get back on the court. He did tell me when I asked him about his height that he's 6'11" without shoes and his hair pushed down. So, pretty big dude. And that's great to hear. Eric Ryba, another really impressive dude. He was a McDonald's All-American. He was at the Nike Hoop Summit. He's a giant lefty center. He made some young mistakes early on in the first half, kind of got stagnant off ball and with his spacing. He set a moving screen, but he really got to go in the second half. He was hitting the offensive glass, really started to, help create second chance opportunities, hit this nice turnaround fader from 8 feet. That was really pretty. I think he's a major breakout candidate next year if he works on his body. Because right now his body, as tall as he is, he looks a little underdeveloped. And so I think that he spends an offseason working on his body, getting better as a basketball player, and he could be a potential lottery guy next year. Also on the UConn side, we have Solo Ball. This is a guy who I know has some fans in NBA front offices. It's easy to see why. He's a lefty shooter. He's physical. He's long. He knows what he's doing. He can get hot. He could be a little erratic and streaky as a shooter, but when it goes in, he could really catch fire. So he had a pretty good game. Some of his misses were a little wild, but he had a good game. Silas Demery, I thought, he wasn't going out and getting a ton of buckets, but man, beautiful jumper, was knocking down outside shots, really effective against the Illinois drop. I thought he played a really great floor game. Alex Caravan, this is a dude who has been, on the radar for a while. I mean, look, he looks the same as he did last year. He is a pair of Nike Air Monarchs, just old, reliable, maybe not the most stylish or appealing, but they're going to get the job done. I mean, if you liked him last year, you're going to like him this year. He looks pretty much the same. He knows where to be. He keeps the ball moving. He knocks down outside shots. My big question for him is he a great shooter or is he a really good shooter? Because if he's a great shooter, then I think his future is a little more clear from an NBA context. If he's just a really good shooter, I have some questions because he's pretty much stuck to the 4 spot. I don't think he's mobile enough to move with threes. He warms up with the big men. Now he does have real size. He's got thick legs. He's tall. He's probably a legit 6'9", and I know he measured. He's long. So, he's got some positives to him for sure. But I think ultimately he really, really has to shoot it if he's going to be a dude at the next level. So that is our UConn prospects. We're going to take one more break, and when we come back, we are going to preview another game I'm going to between Purdue and Rutgers. What if sports were traded like markets? Well, now you could put your sports IQ to work in real time with Robinhood Prediction Markets. It's not you against the house. It's you participating in a live market. You can buy or sell your positions live all game long. Use your sports knowledge in the moments that matter. Robinhood Prediction Markets change the game. It's people moving the action. So when momentum shifts, you can move with it. I always knew the game, but never had a dynamic way to apply that knowledge. Now I can actually take part live in a market powered by people. You're no longer just a spectator. Play by play, you decide. Trade every play with Robinhood. Now available across the U.S. Download the Robinhood app now to begin. All right, thank you for making Locked On NBA Draft with No Ceilings your first listen of the day, and thank you for making Locked On the #1 sports podcast network. All right, we are going to finish out here previewing a couple of prospects that I am excited to see from Purdue, and one guy I'm excited to see at Rutgers from a prospect perspective. Starting out, Braden Smith, the man, potentially the National Player of the Year. for Purdue. The best point guard in college basketball, bar none. This dude is a genius on the court. I mean, he gets to his spots. He makes every play in the book. He is a leader. He is a winner. So what is the problem with him as a prospect? Best point guard in college. What's the deal? Well, older dude who's been in college for, he's a senior now. And he is generously probably 6 foot, 6'1", whatever he's listed at. I've seen him a few times live already. But the dude is long. He is strong. And I just think the kid, like, he's going to be an NBA player. It might take a few spots to figure it out, but he's so smart. His handle is great. He could shoot from outside. He can make every pass. He's tough. He could defend. I think he's going to be one of these guys that you could use as a change of pace at the next level. He'll get into guys. He'll guard 94 feet. I wish he was 6'4", but he is what he is. And I still think that he's an exciting prospect. And somebody who I think is like on the border of my first round, honestly, because I just think that like the kid knows how to play the game and he's going to figure it out. We see guys like a Colin Gillespie right now, who's absolutely killing for the Phoenix Suns. Now, Colin is a little bit taller probably, but he's similar trajectory. And he even had to deal with a knee injury in college, but he's figured it out. It's taken a little bit. It's taken a few years. He's figured it out. So I think Braden Smith is going to figure out. The other guy I'm really excited to get a look at is Daniel Jacobson, their backup center, who is like 7'2", and he's killing the advanced metrics. He only played a couple of games last year in very limited minutes. He's playing this year. He's a guy I got to see in high school one time live, and he's always been intriguing. And, you've probably heard his name before. He's gone through the Team USA circuit. So, he is not an unknown by any stretch of the imagination. But I think that he's a guy who is super efficient around the rim. He is a great shot blocker. He could space the floor a little bit. He's not shooting them at crazy volume, but he could space the floor a little bit. And I don't know if he's going to come out this year, because his body is still a little underdeveloped. You'd like to see him get stronger. He's not Zach Edey, who was just like an absolute mammoth physically. But his frame is definitely one in which I think he can get stronger. So maybe he just keeps getting a bag in college, develops, and maybe next year is his year. But he's got a really, really impressive advanced statistical profile. And I'm excited to see him at the rack at Rutgers, which is a pretty crazy place to play at when it's popping. Purdue has a couple of other interesting guys. CJ Cox is interesting. There's Trey Kaufman-Wren. But those are the two main guys who I'm excited personally to see. On the Rutgers side, we have Dylan Grant, sophomore wing, who's been playing pretty well this year. He's athletic. I want to see him get more consistent as a shooter, though he's shooting it okay this year. And I want to see him become more consistent as like a connected playmaker. But like as your kind of like 6'8" wing who's toolsy, there's some stuff to work with. I don't think he's a draft prospect this year necessarily, but he was a guy who intrigued me as a freshman in limited minutes. He's intriguing me this year as he's taking on that role as like Rutgers' dude. And I think that this is a guy that we need to monitor and keep an eye on. And so that's what we're going to do in Piscataway, New Jersey, as Purdue takes on Rutgers. I'm going to have a much more in-depth breakdown later in the week on my impressions from that Purdue and Rutgers game that I got to see in person for you guys. That's coming on Friday. Until then, thank you for making Locked On your first listen every day. For your second listen, go find Locked On Fantasy Basketball. Josh Lloyd hosts the #1 fantasy basketball podcast, giving you daily tips and helping you win your league, all while making you a smarter NBA fan. Find Locked On Fantasy Basketball on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm Corey Tulaba. I'll see you next week.